Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Foothill Paint Fabrication. Well, we're finally getting back to the door and fender gaps after 3 months of messing around with that chassis, trying to get it good enough to get it back up underneath the body. And as you can see, I've got the hood on, I've got the doors on, and I got the fenders on. Now, if you saw Tuesday's review of the repop hood, you know it's really nice except where it's not. So I decided to go ahead and get the old hood out for alignment purposes, and it'll work just fine for that. We'll fix that other hood later, or at least attempt to. I hope I can fix it. It's a really nice hood. So yeah, let's just go ahead and jump in. I'll show you what I've got lined up and how it's looking, and then we'll get over on those door gaps. Okay, let's start with the hood to fender gaps. And as you can see, we've got a pretty good gap right here. I think that's just shy of 1/4 inch. And that's the absolute tightest I can get it without it rubbing when you start to open the hood. Now I do have the old worn out factory hinges in here. I've looked at billet hinges. I've had all kinds of thoughts in my head of rolling around. How can I make this better? I do not like that big gap, so I'm going to try to figure something out. Now some of the billet hinges require a 5/16 minimum gap here, and that's just, I'm not going bigger, that's for sure. That's unacceptable just to have billet hinges. So I'm thinking about some stuff. You guys got ideas? Let me know. I'd love to hear them. So, but we do have a 7/64 inch gap along the fender to hood, and it's looking pretty good. I think that's the gap I'm going to stick with to the very end. So I think it looks good. Now we're going to add some paint thickness to all this, so some of this is going to have to fatten up a little bit, I think, but I think we're looking pretty good right there. And this side is looking just as good. I've been using that bag quite a bit to help me with all my adjustments. So over on the doors, when we get over here, I've got everything lined up, you know, this way, you know, everything's looking pretty good, but I do want my gaps to be uniform. No matter how wide they are, I want them to be nice and uniform. And this is a little fat here, and then it tightens up right there. So I want to tinker with that a little bit. Even along here, I want it to look good. And this kind of waves in and out. So I think we're going to have to do something to, to this piece here. I think this is nice and smooth. That may take some work, but that's just slight cosmetic stuff. Now the door gaps, I think I've got them right where I want them, but the fenders still need to be adjusted. So it's a little tighter up here than it is at the bottom. So I think that's one of the first things we're going to tackle. And like I said, I want them to be uniform, you know, front to back. I want these to look the same no matter what the gap is, and we have to stick with a gap about this big, because when these doors open, that tucks in. And I've got the Fisher body manual out, so let's take a look at that real quick, and we'll see what the specs say for when the door is partially open, how much gap you need right there. All right, I've got the Fisher service manual. I thought it was the body manual for 1967, and we're on the page for GM A-body doors. And so it's got, you know, the Chevy, Oldsmobile, Pontiac, and the Pontiac's right there. And it tells you where to measure, how far down to, you know, get all your gaps. So this, for Pontiac, it's a 1/16 of an inch plus a 1/16 or minus 0. So it could be, you can be a 1/16 bigger, but you can't go lower than a 1/16. And they want you to measure down to right there. So I made some gauges, and kind of made these up. So that's 9 1/28, that's 128 of an inch over a 1/16. There's 5/64, 3/32, and 7/64. And of course I have a couple of wrenches here. So when the car is done and painted, this is going to be the one I use to adjust the fenders back. So we're going to shoot for a little bit bigger, I think, 3/32 to account for all the, because we're going to have buildup on the door and the inside of the fender. So I think this is the one we want to shoot for. But these are just kind of helping me. So let's set the camera down and kind of take a look what I'm talking about when the door is partially open. Okay, we're over at the driver's door, and if I open it, it tucks in right there, and there's a lip on there. So I have the 7/64, and if I find it's just kind of hard to push in right there. So this is about the tightest spot right here. So this is where I'm going to do all my measuring right here. So the 3/32 fits right in there. But the problem is I'm not ready to do that because this gap is not even. I think the bottom needs to come in. So if I check it with a wrench, it doesn't want to slide in, but it easily slides in down here. So we need to get this fender adjusted down at the bottom. And then once we get this as uniform as possible, then we can come back and start checking that gap right there to see if we're good this direction. So let me go ahead and get this fender adjusted. It's a simple matter of loosening the bolts down there and just pulling that in until I get a nice even gap on both fenders and doors on both sides. And then we can start fiddling with that and see where we're at. Then we can move forward with some other gaps. All right, that was pretty simple. So now we're nice and even all the way down. Not perfect, but it's as uniform as I can get it. Now I took the bottom bolt loose. I have a few shims in there, and I was able to pull it back, but it started distorting the fender. So I went ahead and took one shim out of a 1/2 inch shim and went down to a 1/4 inch shim on the radiator support, and that just let it come down naturally right where we wanted it. I just got the adjustment this way and then tightened it up, and we're good to go. So we're looking really good. And of course, that's with the door shimmed in the closed position. So I've got shims in here with a squeeze clamp, so it always holds the door right back to the same location, so it's not moving. We can't have the door sitting at a slightly different angle when we do all these adjustments. The other side, we're not so lucky, so let's walk over there and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, this side, it's got a bigger gap all the way down, and yes, I could move the fender back a little, but you can see we're touching right here, and we are actually bigger here, and we're tighter here. So basically this door needs to go forward, and I think I knew it needed to go forward, I just didn't want to readjust it. All right, this door is the problem child, but I think I've got it adjusted just about as good as it's ever going to get. So I made a little gauge for the width of the gaps. So, and this measures about 200 thousandths. So it just fits inside there, just bumps. And on the other side, it fits in all the way. So they're not exactly the same, but I had to take into account all the other gaps. It fits in right here. So this is going to be our gauge for back here and in the front on both sides, but it's looking pretty good. Let me put the camera down. We'll check that pinch point and see how tight it gets. All right, I've got the door open, so this is as tight as it'll ever get. And I got the 3/32 right here, and it just fits in there. It's a little tight right there, but it fits in. The 5/64, of course, fits really good. The other side, it's even better than this side. We just have to watch our paint mill thickness right in this area, make sure we don't get carried away over there, but I think we're going to be okay. Let's go ahead and get this door set where it's going to be, measure the back, and start figuring out what we need to do back there to make that gap look really nice. All right, now that we finally got the doors and the fenders where they're going to be, and we know it's possible to get them looking really good, it's time to go ahead and fix these gaps. So this gauge right here fits really nice in here, but as soon as we turn this corner, it's got quite a bit of gap. So we need to fix this. Now, we already added material to this before when we were in sheet metal, but we're going to have to add some more. That's just the way it's going to be. So if you look at this edge right here on the quarter panel, it's nice and smooth and looks really good, but the door kind of goes in and out a little bit. So what we're going to do is basically keep adding metal on here with a TIG welder until this is the same parallel all the way down. So we're going to have to grind off the epoxy on here. I'll mark the location from end to end, and we'll get both sides, get the wire wheel in here, get it cleaned up, and get the TIG welder over here and start adding onto this. Okay, we got that cleaned up real nice. I think I need to go a little bit higher though. It does start touching right here, but I want to start high on my welds, and then that way I can transition nice and smooth and not have to do it later. So now we need to decide what are we going to do. Or you can see the gap right there, but it's not gigantic. But I think tacking a welding or a filler rod on there and then welding that on is going to be more work than just me laying down a few beads, because I've had more luck just laying the beads down than doing the rod, and this isn't a gigantic gap, so I think that's going to be our best bet. I'm going to clean this up a little bit higher. We'll get the TIG welder out and start laying some beads up and down this thing. Okay, I got this sanded really well and wire wheeled, but I see some pits in here. Hopefully there's no epoxy down inside there. It'll let me know as soon as I get there. I've got a piece of copper lightly clamped on here, hopefully to pull some of the heat away. And yeah, let's see if I remember how to do this. All right, that didn't go too bad. Couple of low spots in there, but the heat affecting zone is staying fairly small. Lingered way too long right there, but yeah, I'll bring you back. I'm gonna let it cool a little bit and then just keep going down. I'm about to get into the pit area, so we'll see what happens there. All right, those aren't the prettiest welds. In fact, they're pretty ugly, but we are making some progress here. That's 2 passes right there, and we can't fit the block in except 1 or 2 spots. So I think we're just about there. We need to grind it. And then it did tuck in a little bit in some of these areas, so we're going to have to hammer that back out once we rough grind it. But I just ran out of shielding gas, so I got to run into town, pick up a new bottle. So we'll pick this up when I get back. All right, guys, what a difference a fresh bottle of argon makes. That went a lot smoother for the touch-ups. And I think we've got enough build-up there so we can start grinding it back. I've already done some preliminary grinding here and there just to knock the high spots down, find the low spots. It does stick up here and there, so I need to kind of grind that roughly smooth on both sides, bump it back out since it did tuck in, and then we can start really getting after it and getting that gap nice and even all the way down. Okay, we got the inside sanded pretty nicely. It's looking pretty good. And I did run the grinder down the face here, knock the high spots down, so I think we're looking pretty good. I'm thinking what I should have done in hindsight was when it was in bare steel, since I didn't have the chassis underneath the car to mock up the fenders and doors and everything, know exactly what my gaps are going to be. What I should have done was possibly, you remember I did add some material to kind of straighten out the door because it had a little wave in it. What I should have done was add like 3/32 all the way from the top to the bottom, ground it smooth, knock the tuck out of it, got it flat again, and then once it's in epoxy, then all I would have to do is basically sand this edge back till we get a perfect gap. Well, like everything, you think of a better way after you're already done, but this did tuck. You put that much heat on it, and you're going to get it. So you got to know how to get it out. So it's not bad, but it does need to be knocked back out. So let me put the camera down, and we'll knock this back out flat. All right, to bump this back out, I'm going to turn to the rubber mallet once again. It saves me from making mistakes, and it moves a mass of material without putting dents in it. So if I use like a body hammer, the chances are I could put a series of dents in this to push it back out. But if I use the rubber mallet, it really just moves a mass of material, so you don't have to worry about that. It's a lot more forgiving. You guys may want to give it a try. And I'm going to back it up with the dolly, just a flat dolly, just to hold up against here. And we're just going to give it a couple of good whacks. And since the dolly's flat, it kind of helps me eyeball it, see where we're at. Then I can just take the straight edge and lay it on there and see where we're at. It should be straight across here. It shouldn't roll in or roll out. So that's pretty easy since the contour is so parallel. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep hammering on this thing, see if we can't get this this tuck out, and then we'll get back over there and start grinding this lip so we get a perfect parallel line all the way up and down that door jamb. All right, that took about 15 minutes, and it's looking pretty good. May not be perfect right now, but it's still a little rough. But I got it bumped out good enough, so now we can smooth out this line right here. There's still a little bit of a ledge. We may still have a low spot here and there we may have to weld in, but we're sneaking up on it. So once I get that smoothed out, then we can fine tune that, make sure it's nice and smooth, have no waves in it, and it lines up with the quarter panel really nice. So let me bust that out, and then we're going to figure out how we're going to grind this so it's nice and even all the way down. All right, we're looking pretty good, and what you're seeing is quite a bit more work. So after I bumped it out, I hammered and dollied it a little bit to smooth some of the bad spots out, ground it, sanded it, found some low spots and some big pits and some other stuff, so I went back, re-welded it, of course had to bump it out again, hammer and dolly it again, sand it again, so there's a little bit of work here. So this is DA'd with 80 grit, and then a Scotch-Brite pad to make it look halfway decent for you guys. And now we have to figure out how we're going to get our 200 thousandths gap all the way down through here. So I've been standing here thinking about it. I think the best way to do it is to ink this and then pull my blocks out. You can see I've got blocks in here. It spaces that out perfect, so we get this you know, perfectly flush right here. And honestly, I'm not worried about, you know, making this a perfect match right now. I'm just worried about getting this to 200 thousandths. We'll worry about this part later, but we got to get that gap in there first. So yeah, I think I'm going to ink it, pull these blocks or one of these blocks out so it's just inset just a little bit, and then just take my calipers, set them to 200 thousandths, push it up against there, and scribe right through the ink all the way down, open the door, grind to the line, sand to the line, and that should be it. Piece of cake, right? Well, let's find out. All right, hopefully I'll be able to see this line. Scratching up my door jamb there a little bit, but that's no big deal. All right, looks like it's going to work. I'm going to finish this off, then we'll get the door propped open, and we'll start grinding and sanding up to that line. All right, there's my scribe. I'm going to go ahead and do this off camera. I'll bring it back when we got it done. All right, we are looking fantastic, guys. I know it's hard to see with that ink on there, but we are just under 200 thousandths. It just wants to go in. So we're looking pretty good. In fact, it's a little smaller on this side than this side. So we are just under, and that's pretty much what it does on the front there. So it's nice and even, and all I did was use that grinder right there. It's got a nice flat face, and I just opened the door and just kept going back and forth and grinding wherever there was more to remove up to the line. Once I got to the line, I started checking. I checked maybe 15 times. Just use that grinding disc and held it flat, perpendicular, and just kept going back and forth and double checking and, you know, just moving more where I needed it until we got to this nice even gap. So I did run a file over it just to knock the burr down so I don't cut myself, but I do need to get the file out and round that edge over real nice. But we are done on this side as far as door gaps, because this one is perfect all the way along there except for right here. I don't know if you guys can see that right there. It's no good. So it's kind of jiggly in there, but it's not the door. It's the fender. I don't know if you guys can see that kind of wonks in right there. So that's going to be for another video. I got to sleep on that one, figure out what I want to do there. I'm not going to weld, you know, something on here to match that. It's got to be a nice smooth transition. And we've got a lot of other work to do up here. This gap, that gap. I don't like what's going on up here, but yeah, we're looking pretty good. Give me a minute to file this nice and round right here. I'll bring you back. We'll take a final look at it. All right, guys, all done. Got that edge rounded over. Now, this isn't perfect as far as my welding goes. There's some pits in there, a couple of weld lines, but it is perfect as far as that gap. It's perfectly parallel from top to bottom, just under 200,000, which is just what I wanted. So really happy to get that done. And since that gap is basically perfect, we're good up on this side. We got that little thing to do with the fender, but we'll figure that out later. But this side is done. The other side, I think we'll do that next week, and it's not so easy. The quarter panel needs to be cut right here, needs to be pushed back, re-welded, shaped. I think we're a little big and tight here and there on that one. And the front might need a little bit of work too, so that'll be next week. But I'm super happy to get this busted out and kind of get that off the list. All right, that wraps up this video and getting the door gaps on the passenger side all knocked out. We took the long way to get here, but I'm glad we're finally here. All that other work we did, it's been paying off dividends every time I touch the car. So I'm really thrilled to get moving forward again. Thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Mash that bell and drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. We'll see you on the next one.